It is important to learn to manage your attention consciously. This means that at every given moment, you need to be able to command your attention so it truly becomes your fully functional tool. Right now, you have arms, legs, and you most likely control them just fine, right? Your hand isn't trying to strangle you, and you don't have to fight with it, do you? So, you feel more or less confident with yourself. But our attention is like some kind of invisible fifth limb, which often operates in people, on the principle of a hose into which water pressure has been applied, but no one is holding it in their hands. And it is just dangling like this, spraying everything in its path, and absolutely nothing good comes out it. Therefore, to learn to manage attention, constant training is essential, and the practices are the training methods needed. You can think of it like going to the gym. But if you train properly at the gym, then you will feel the effect of that in your daily life afterwards. Here, in practice, it is a bit more difficult. To experience its effect in your daily life, you must learn to integrate it into your life. And so, you've probably heard from many awakened individuals that at some point, as a person elevates their level of development, they begin to experience a unity with everything. They start to perceive that this world is literally an extension of themselves, and everything that happens here, in a way, is only for them. All of this is also them. It's like they're pieces. How can this be shown practically? I'll try to draw it now. If it will be difficult to see, just let me know, okay? I'll turn it over for convince. So, what exactly does any of your tension actually represent? Meaning, any negative emotion, any of your programs, or any thought, a judgment that also causes some kind of discomfort. It's like a feedback signal coming to you from the space. So, here you are. I will write it simply. And if you are experiencing some sort of discomfort, you can understand it this way, as if at some point in the past, you released that signal, that feeling of discomfort, that emotion, that tension into the space. And after some time, it just came back to you like a boomerang. This means that in your daily life, you are always working only with things that you've already started earlier. It's never the case that you're dealing with something that, never existed before. This means that your own signals are returning to you. I'll write signals just like that. So, it's like you're always working only with yourself. And even if another individual comes to you, perhaps brings something, some event, or causes some negative emotion within you, you are always working with yourself. That's the first thing that has to be understood. So, for the majority of people, awareness is perceived in a rather simplistic manner. For instance, like moving around mindfully. Or, breathing consciously, looking around consciously. In reality, awareness is when you come to realize that you are the source. I'll just write source here. Meaning, the cause of what is happening to you is inside of you. This is our primary starting point. We always work with signals. These signals that come back to you are called karma, or accumulated tension. So, if you are accustomed to reacting with irritation to something, you will repeatedly encounter situations that provoke it within you. And this mechanism will continue until you, as the source, alter your inner content and what you transmit into the space. This is, in a way, our zone of responsibility. If you are a conscious person, then for you, awareness is when you remembered that you are the source. So how do we in our school, in our team, work with ourselves at a basic level? We have various methods and tools, including more powerful, advanced ones. However, they can only be used once an individual has attained high speed and is moving along this path with a very high speed. Because one way or another, if you are serious about your practice, you must understand that we will be always speaking about the speed. How quickly would you like to achieve these changes in your life? To finally awaken, right? Lena mentioned she wishes to accomplish it in just a couple of months. Right now, I'm explaining how you can speed up this process. You're the source? Let's assume that right at this moment, you are experiencing a certain discomfort. For instance, Helen is disappointed. or Natasha is in some state of her own, and Nastya has some sort of, Lena has her own fear, or something like that. If you turn your attention inward, and observing yourself is a basic skill, directing attention into the body is a basic skill that we constantly practice, it should become, the credo of your life, to always keep a small part of your attention inside. Because first of all, the body always exists in the present moment, and it always tells the truth. If you always will be in contact with your body, with your inner feelings, you'll always understand what's happening now at early stages, that something is starting to develop, for instance, a potential breakdown or terrible tension, and then you'll be always able to respond. This is essentially a basic skill, therefore you simply need to learn to continuously practice it. Moreover, for those interested in awakening, approximately 70% of all cases where someone achieves awakening occurred through contact with the body, meaning through focused attention within the body. The remaining 30% represent various other approaches and methods for awakening. So, when you turn your attention inward due to any discomfort, there are usually two components inside. The first component is thoughts. And the second component, let's call it sensations. In principle, these are slightly different sensations, feelings, emotions. They're a bit different. But they all share one thing, that it is a sensory component and that it is inside of us. It is there. And typically, for the majority of people, if you look around, seeing how your friends, neighbors, or even family members live, when they encounter a state of discomfort, they often find themselves dwelling in it for a considerably long time. This happens because a natural circulation arises right here. When a person is thinking about something, perhaps something bad, then a negative emotion arises. This emotion then prompts them to think about it once more, and he thinks negatively again. And so, he's basically like a hamster on a wheel, continuously moving within this small samsara that's unfolding inside him, a little inner hell, a slight internal turmoil. And to interrupt this process, the first thing that you need to do, the habit that you need to cultivate, is to firmly divide, meaning to draw a clear line. You need somehow cut off your thoughts and completely focus your attention entirely on your feelings. Thoughts are somewhat the dry part. They're always connected with emotions, and emotions are the juicy part of it. But thoughts are impossible to work with. They're too fast, and they will be always quicker than you. Even if you stop your mind, you're not really helping yourself much in your practice. However, as soon as you fully redirect your attention to your sensations, that's when you get a chance to neutralize the negative charge that manifests in your life as some kind of a block or a program, consuming some of your vital energy and preventing you from returning this energy to yourself. Because, over the course of our lives, we accumulate a tremendous amount of tension. And if you begin to remove all of these accumulated tensions, start to get rid of it, then the moment of awakening is when you wake up and remember who you are. Simply speaking, it means that you relieved about 35% of your tension, that's all. That's already an enormous amount of work, really. Most of the tension you don't even feel. It remains hidden deep within your subconscious. If we were to bring it all to the surface right now, none of you would be able to handle it. It's just impossible to endure. Our bodies and minds are physically incapable of withstanding such a mass of negative experiences. Therefore, you have to engage in practices and prepare psychophysics for quite a while, so your awakening happens as gently and naturally as possible. But as soon as you disengage from your thoughts and shift your focus to sensations, a process initiates when your attention begins to dissolve that negative charge. On our team, this method is called the conscious living of discomfort, or the technique for neutralization of charges. So, in the beginning, this is the simplest thing a person can start doing. And it's the most powerful in the sense that this technique always works. Regardless of what methods you use, some are different, very cool, and quite advanced. Sometimes they just don't work. You can't apply them because the emerging tension is too deep, but conscious living through it always works. Yeah, it might take you 30 seconds, and you've lived through something. This means you've observed it within yourself, felt it without analysis or judgment, because you've cut off all thoughts. Yes, including the analysis too. You simply dismissed it, stopped analyzing, digging, and probing into it. You just allowed yourself to experience it fully. And sometimes superficial things will go away quickly, but other times it can take longer, even several hours or several days. You can time to time bring your attention into your body and observe it, fully experience, live through it. Naturally, your mind, as the master, isn't accustomed to surrendering freedom or giving up without a struggle. It will continue to provoke you with various thoughts, such as, who's at fault here? Why is all of this happening in my life? How could he dare to do that? And so on and so forth. It will keep telling you some sort of stories, endless stories. So, the second word we'll write here is stories. The stories that your mind replays are a specific type of your thoughts, some memories. You keep replaying, how dare he say that to me? I should have answered him this way. And in that moment, you experience those emotions again, right? Or let's say, Lena thinks, I want to do this and that, but how will I manage? I might not be able to handle it. And again, the circulation between fear and thoughts began. As soon as a story begins, that's it. We simply cut it off and then discard it. But how exactly do we do that? We don't deny it within ourselves. We don't try to fight the thoughts. We just say, okay, well, yes, he said something incorrectly there. I acknowledge that information and then completely turn my attention to my feelings. Because you would probably agree with me, you might have noticed that when something uncomfortable comes up in your life, you start thinking about it again and again. Who here has experienced this? You have? See, it's unanimous. Because the mind can't just let it go. It chews on it, again and again. So, first of all, what you do, you sharply break that cycle, stop those thoughts, and switch completely to sensations. And right here, there are a few additions that make this entire process more efficient, and check where your work with attention might be falling short. Because if it breaks down at any stage, you feel as though you're observing. Such a situation emerges. You seem to be observing, seem to be going through it, yet you don't feel any better. Perhaps it's even worse, right? And you endure this long, agonizing process. It begins to resemble some form of sadomasochism. And to prevent all of that from happening, there are several key things you can do, almost like following a direct set of instructions and then test yourself. The very first point is acceptance. That's the basis, really. In fact, what we just did, the stillness practice, if you approach it a little differently, it would be a practice of acceptance. So what exactly is implied by this idea of acceptance? You could, within yourself, be experiencing certain emotions and feelings and desperately fighting them, not accepting them, wanting to get rid of them, wishing they weren't there, trying to run away from them. As soon as you get drawn into this cycle, which is just a normal reaction of our reptilian brain, if you try to escape from discomfort, try to suppress it, or vent that aggression on someone, you're caught. You simply resume that cycle, leading to thoughts and etc. Therefore, to remove the struggle and opposition to this inner process, it's necessary to come to terms with what is inside of you. So you are agreeing that if this emotion or feeling of discomfort is present, then just let it be there. Let it be there as long as needed. It just is, and I agree that it just is. I stop fighting with this fact. That is to say that it is already existing. If it's already existing, your fight doesn't genuinely change anything. That's how our nature works. If you start fighting your inner state, you usually just make your discomfort worse. Try next time to force yourself to get rid of something. You'll notice that it will only worsen. So, the first step is to enter into this acceptance. We train this acceptance through practices of stillness or acceptance. This is truly a fundamental basis. You must constantly practice it. But if you consciously realize you must agree with these feelings, if, for example, you feel irritation and a very strong resistance to that irritation, you won't get rid of the irritation until the resistance is gone. Therefore, agree with the resistance. In other words, you accept your non-acceptance, and you pay attention to that first of all. Focus on that feeling of non-acceptance, that feeling of disagreement, and turn it into agreement. So you agree with the disagreement, you accept the non-acceptance. And by doing this, the moment it happens, the entire program can instantly collapse. Sometimes it happens instantly once agreement is reached. The second thing you can use in this situation further is presence. The thing is that our attention can have different degrees of penetrating power. That is, so to speak. It's like you can either just lightly brush this inner feeling with your attention, or you can fully immerse yourself in its profound depths. And this profound depth is attained through presence. You sort of begin to be present within this feeling, within this discomfort, observing it just as you would observe a sunset or a fire in the fireplace, right? Or the frost that is painting some patterns on the window. Just observe it, being as present in it as you possibly can. So, it's as if you're fully aligning your entire mechanism, your whole being, to perceive that only this exists at this very moment. Now it is only all what exists. It is understandable that in daily life you will have distractions and it won't always succeed. But if you will train regularly, then the strength of your attention and its presence will grow, and you won't even require 100% of focus, that this charge could dissolve within you. A small part of your attention can remain inside, and at times you can strengthen it through presence. This presence can also be strengthened if you add a specific coloring to your attention. What does coloring mean? It means your attention can be different. It can be, neutral, or some kind indifferent. Or it can be a warm, and this first stage of this warm interest, this warm attention, is indeed interest. So you don't just begin to be present with this feeling inside you, but you are present in it with interest. You explore it, and you really study it. What exactly is this feeling? It is some kind of feeling within us, but what's its surface like? How does it transform? And to what other areas does it extend? You start exploring this feeling with interest, with excitement, much like an explorer such as Livingstone would. But this kind of interest you see is purely contemplative. It is entirely without analysis. It's not the kind of interest where you're trying to figure it out, to dig in and find the cause. That brings you back to down here. And this is an interest that lies precisely in feeling something, touching or tasting for the very first time. You truly indeed need to feel it, don't you? It's a sensual interest. And so, if you have reached this particular stage, then essentially, at this point, virtually any of your programs or feelings of discomfort can simply vanish. And you might even feel that an entire chapter has ended. You realize that it was very foolish to behave or think that way, or to have that attitude, and even to experience that emotion, right? And it's as if you become stronger. Essentially, for most people, this kind of daily work on oneself should look exactly like this. You notice something, you observe it, and it dissolves. That's it. You're free. There's no need to dig deep within yourself. And what's interesting is that in Buddhism, for example, this particular practice was once very secret and sacred. It was only passed down very selectively from teacher to student. Now it's generally more accessible, let's say. As you can see, I'm openly discussing this with you, even though we didn't take it from Buddhism. These are just ordinary things, like the laws of how our attention works, specially presented to you in such a convenient structural form. But overall, in Buddhism, it's considered that simply being present with your attention during moments of discomfort is already sufficient for enlightenment, provided you practice it regularly. At least, that's what's believed. At least in past centuries and times, that was definitely enough. Now, for modern people, the story is more complicated because there are so many more stressors. And that's why we're now talking about a team and a systematic approach with a comprehensive methodology to make it realistic. But this is, in principle, already enough at this stage. Furthermore, it is possible to make this entire process even more effective, if, through dedicated practice, you have cultivated the capacity to instantly evoke feelings such as love, gratitude, kindness, joy, or simply a sense of warmth and heartfelt openness, then you have the ability to add to your attention very warm quality. So, it's not just interest, but for example, you see something that really annoys you, and you start observing it with love as if, it's a dirty, frightened little kitten inside of you, right? And it's hissing there, and you understand that it is unhappy. Because any discomfort inside of you doesn't come from great happiness. And you start treating this little part of yourself, which is already inside you, with great love. And this love, it begins to have an effect like, it creates a kind of healing, transformative effect. Sometimes if you just observe something neutrally, you kind of resolve it, but you don't get to a positive state. But loving your feelings, your own emotions, that's what allows you to get into a positive state. This is something you can easily put into practice in your daily life. And it is in principle accessible to any person. For example, you can start looking at your feelings with gratitude, seeing that life has stirred something up inside you, and it's cleansing and freeing you. Or you feel happy that something has triggered you, thinking that how great it is, and you start feeling joy. And through regular practice, you too will come across something that we frequently address within our team, that over time you'll become so unaffected by things that you genuinely begin to feel joy when something finally triggers you, because you'll instantly feel, now I have another chance to dismantle some part of this wall, to pull it down, and reach an even deeper state of unity. And trust me, after awakening, there are several more levels of consciousness, and these walls might persist even up to the third high level of consciousness, but this allows you to truly free yourself from them. So that's it, briefly speaking. I think that's clear, isn't it? So, answering to your questions, if you master this practice, you'll certainly be able to stabilize yourself after awakening and even progress further. More likely that, of course, will not want to stop. However, after awakening, it could feel that great that you'll want to enjoy and stay there for a while. But you know, life always starts to increase the load if an individual who stops progressing. Therefore, we need to clearly understand that progressing along this path isn't about reaching some stop that offers a nicer view, some oasis, right? It's ultimately about arriving at the final destination. And, relatively speaking, for our world, that point is full realization or a unified level of consciousness. That's not the end. The movement still continues, but slightly and differently. And naturally, it is virtually impossible for any modern individual to achieve this state all by themselves. So, I highly recommend not get stuck on anything, because you'll soon understand that the further you progress, the more amazing it becomes. And all these stops, when they typically emerge, they are more like a kind of a trap when everything is already going so well. I can finally relax, simply live, simply enjoy myself. Don't. We don't recommend it because you'll just waste precious time and later you'll regret it. Life is short, so it's important to use it wisely.